Banned from television last night and back on television tonight. With us is Texas State Representative James Tallarico. He's a Democratic candidate for the United States Senate in Texas now. Thank you very much for doing this, by the way. I understand what it must have been like the last 24 hours trying to figure out how to go forward from here, especially today, and wondering, is this the year? Is this the year when the Democrats can finally win statewide in Texas again? And just to set up the degree of difficulty, as you know, it's been 38 years since a Democrat won a Senate election.
Well, I think the reason the Trump administration and their billionaire friends are trying to silence me and this movement is because they're worried that we are going to flip Texas in November of this year. There is a growing backlash across.
She were currency. She was wealthy in it. And then suddenly she wasn't. What makes this so compelling isn't just that she criticized Trump. Politicians argue all the time. Alliances shift. But this wasn't a quiet disagreement behind closed doors. This was a public rupture, sharp, personal, and explosive. Let's rewind to November 2025. Trump took to social media and did something almost unthinkable. He turned on MTG. He labeled her wacky. He branded her far left, an eyebrow-raising accusation given her history as one of the most hardline conservative voices in Congress. He even called her a traitor and publicly withdrew his support for her Georgia seat. In Trump world, losing his endorsement is more than symbolic. It's political oxygen being cut off. His backing has long been a decisive force in Republican primaries. When he pulls it, it's meant to signal the end. But this time, the story didn't follow the usual script. The central issue driving the fracture? The Epstein files. MTG pushed aggressively for full transparency regarding documents tied to Jeffrey Epstein. She demanded complete disclosure, every name, every connection, no redactions. For her, it became a test of what America First truly meant. Expose corruption, no matter who it implicates. Trump, however, favored a more controlled approach. Delays, redactions, caution, MTG wouldn't back down. And instead of reconciling, Trump went nuclear. But here's the twist. She didn't collapse under the pressure. Days later, MTG announced her resignation from Congress effective January 5, 2026. And her resignation statement wasn't measured or diplomatic. It was blistering. She compared her loyalty to Trump to being in an abusive relationship, saying she refused to be a battered wife waiting for things to blow over. It was a metaphor that cut deep, suggesting that unwavering loyalty to Trump came with punishment the moment you stepped out of line. This wasn't a policy disagreement anymore. It was personal. And then came what many are calling her revenge tour. She began appearing in interviews, including with outlets she once dismissed as hostile, telling her side of the story. She criticized Trump for abandoning the America First agenda. She accused him of prioritizing foreign wars over struggling Americans. She questioned his immigration stances. She highlighted corporate favoritism. And repeatedly, she circled back to Epstein transparency, implying Trump was protecting elites, possibly even himself. Here's what makes this politically dangerous for Trump. MTG isn't a Democrat. She isn't a moderate Republican. She isn't establishment. She is MAGA. That distinction changes everything. When outside critics attack Trump, his base often dismisses it as partisan noise. But when someone who stood shoulder to shoulder with him for years says he betrayed the movement, it lands differently. It feels like insider testimony. By late December, MTG escalated further, floating the idea of a 2026 tax revolt. She claimed many Trump voters were so frustrated they were considering withholding taxes as protest. Whether realistic or not, the rhetoric itself was combustible. Tax revolts are not symbolic gestures. They represent civil disobedience. They question legitimacy. And that's the real threat. Because if even a fraction of Trump's base begins to question him, not from the left but from the right, it signals something deeper, that MAGA may be evolving beyond him. For years, Trump operated under a simple formula: MAGA equals Trump. The movement and the man were inseparable, but MTG is testing that equation. She's arguing that loyalty belongs to the America First principles, not to Trump personally. That you can hold the banner without bowing to the individual. And that is a profound shift. Politically, the timing couldn't be worse for Republicans. Heading into the 2026 midterms, GOP strategy depends heavily on energized Trump turnout. If MTG convinces even a segment of that base to disengage, or worse, revolt, turnout drops. Internal fractures grow. Democrats don't need to invent attack ads, they can simply replay her words. And then there's the media dynamic. Major outlets have treated this not as gossip, but as a serious power struggle within the conservative movement. Each interview reinforces a narrative. Trump's once iron grip on MAGA may not be absolute. Questions begin circulating. Is his control slipping? Can former allies redefine the movement? Is there a post-Trump MAGA? Those questions alone create perception shifts, and perception in politics is power. Perhaps most striking is Trump's relative silence. Historically, he responds swiftly and aggressively to critics. Yet with MTG, his counterattacks have been restrained. That silence is strategic, or revealing. Attacking her too forcefully risks turning her into a martyr. Ignoring her allows her message to circulate unchallenged. Either way, it creates space for doubt. And doubt is contagious. What makes this situation volatile isn't just the personalities involved, it's what it exposes about movements built heavily on personal loyalty. When loyalty feels transactional, when supporters perceive that devotion flows one way, resentment can build quickly. If someone once seen as the ultimate insider says, "I was naive, I believed in him, and I was wrong," it offers followers a psychological off-ramp. They can change their minds without feeling foolish. They weren't disloyal, they were misled. That narrative is powerful. It allows voters to say, "We're still America first, we're just holding Trump accountable." And if that sentiment spreads, even modestly, it reshapes the battlefield. Because the real story here isn't just that MTG broke with Trump, it's that she's attempting to claim ownership of the very movement he built. She's positioning herself as the defender of its original promises: transparency, anti-elite rhetoric, non-interventionism, economic nationalism, and arguing that Trump drifted. That's not an external attack. That's an internal rebellion, a MAGA civil war. And civil wars drain energy. They fracture coalitions. They redirect focus from opponents to infighting. Influencers choose sides. Conservative media debates loyalties. The base argues with itself instead of organizing outward. For Trump, the nightmare scenario isn't that everyone abandons him. It's that just enough people hesitate. Just enough turnout softens. Just enough doubt creeps in. Movements built around dominance can appear invincible, until suddenly they don't. Once cracks become visible, they tend to widen. MTG's move signals that Trump's authority within MAGA may be more conditional than it once seemed. If leaders can rise within the movement and challenge him from the right, then his uniqueness weakens. He becomes less singular, more replaceable. And that's a shift he cannot easily reverse. This isn't just a feud. It's a test of ownership, of identity, of who truly defines America first. The MAGA civil war is no longer hypothetical. It's unfolding, publicly, loudly, and with high stakes. And Marjorie Taylor Greene isn't backing down.